Welcome back to another episode of Boom or Bust, your home for NFL Draft Talk. I'm your host, Terry, and today we're looking at the 2019 running backs. Running backs are an interesting group, man. I a long time ago, just understood that this position is a dime a dozen. And a lot of people ended up finding that out, and the position kind of got devalued accordingly. It swung a little too far into where they really were just like dirt bottom of the level. But then it came back eventually where we got, a lot of running backs being drafted in the top echelon of the draft again. And we see that star power pays off. But the fact is you still see a lot of teams getting production out of backs that are nowhere near the top echelon of the draft, not even drafted sometimes. And so the position is just, as a value thing, it is really dime a dozen. When you see guys coming from different rounds and coming on or going on to be stars, it's tough to, really sit here and defend it. So there's that part of it. As part of evaluation, it's tough too because it's such a physical position. Some of these positions are more physical, some more technique, some more IQ. This position in particular is heavy physical. And like everything else, you always depend on your other teammates, but few positions are as dependent as running back. I mean, quarterbacks, yes, you could have a debate between those two, but I would say running backs, because if they shoot in the backfield, you getting the ball, it's nothing you can do. Now, same thing as a quarterback, but running backs really depend on that offensive line. There's some guys that could make something out of bad plays, but there's nobody that could just continuously beat their bad offensive line. You gotta have offensive line play. So all those factors kind of come to this point where, running backs, I like, watching the plays, but it's not fun evaluating them, to be honest with you. So what I look at as far as gradable traits is pretty simple: speed, agility, power. And we grade those out of 5. You're talking about speed, of course. I would say it's not that simple. Speed is more long speed. And so if you think about a running back getting out in the open and his ability to separate, hit a second gear, that's more the speed we're talking about. We're not talking about the initial burst or the acceleration or any of that from the handoff. We're talking about what's the long speed. And then the rest of it's kind of self-explanatory, but agility, short area, change of direction, quickness, ability to stop on a dime, as they say, and redirect. And then power, not just your ability to truck somebody, but what's your ability to stay upright when you go through trash, as they say, or you're getting tackled. Do you go down easily, or if they tackle you up high, there's no way they can take you down, or if they throw their body at you, you fall. So we look at those as the gradable traits, but also balance, vision, receiving ability, blocking ability. That's all part of evaluation too. So, and it's kind of hard to, talk about the top guys per se with this class, especially. I mean, any class you're talking about a bunch of guys that could be productive from anywhere in the draft. But in particular, this draft, you don't have any big time players. So like last year, Saquon was head and shoulders above everybody. This year, you don't really got that. So the two that I will say are probably firmly on most people's top list is the Alabama backs. And we've had this before. If you remember, Cadillac Williams and Ronnie Brown, both coming out of Auburn, same year as Cedric Benson when the Bears drafted him. But, so two top backs coming from the same school isn't unheard of, but, Josh Jacobs tends to be number 1. So we're going to start with him. And for me, I really see it. I see star potential. When you're talking about first round running backs, as I said, anybody can be productive. So what is a first round running back? That's somebody that has some type of elite athletic trait because it's an athletic position. And they have some elite athletic trait, and then they also are pretty versatile too. So with Josh Jacobs, I like the fact that he runs hard, runs angry, as they say. I mean, there's value to being a patient runner, and I think he's distinctive, and he makes the choice of where he wants to go. He has great vision, but mainly wherever he decides to go, he's going 100%. He's not going to tippy-toe around too much. He's going to, get north and south. He's not going to dance around. The one thing I would say with Saquon, and he got better at it in the NFL, was he loved to dance in Penn State. Looking to make a big play, he would just dance, bounce around, and I wanted him to be more distinctive. I don't think Josh has that problem. I think he's very distinctive, and when he finds the hole, he hits it 110%. And then outside of that, I mean, you got great burst, but also pretty good long speed. Showed the ability to outrun some defenders. And then, of course, like most Bama running backs, he's got great tools as a blocker. And that's a big thing in the NFL. It's hard to get on the field as a rookie when you don't know how to block. And then also as a receiving threat, we'll see what he measures out, but it looks like he's got pretty long arms, and I seen him make some good snags, not some easy catches. So we'll see, kind of what he does. And he was a returner, so that should tell you anything as a kickoff returner, what type of athletic ability he has. So, overall, I mean, I don't know if I'm taking him in the first round. But if you're talking about first round, some of the backs last year, he's better than Sony Michel and Nick Chubb as far as potential. So I think you'd be happy picking him up. Now, Damon Harris didn't have as much tape. I've seen him a little bit, so I'll have to catch him on the next round. But I think he has, and I've seen a little bit of Bama in the playoffs. I think Damon has a little more power than Jacobs does. Not necessarily the same takeoff speed, but they're both well built, kind of the same. Damian isn't as long and as far as the limbs, so he might not be the type of receiving threat that Jacobs is, but still a pretty effective guy. Now he might not be the every down back. That might be something people question. Not that he doesn't have the stamina, but is he the pass threat that you might want him to be? But overall, solid back, just like Jacobs, as far as coming from Alabama and having those tools. So outside of those two, just going to pull a couple guys that kind of stood out to me. And honestly, outside of the Bama guys, it's a big clump of the same guys. So first up, Elijah Holyfield out of Georgia. 5'11", 215, explosive guy. I mean, well built, pretty, rock solid, but really good speed, surprising speed, actually. As far as his burst, I think he accelerates pretty well, but pretty well rounded. Now, Georgia's one of the fewer teams that runs a pro style. So you see him, working with play actions, getting handoffs from under center and running those pro style routes. So everything you see, I think, looks really good. Physical tools are really, really nice. I think his power, for as much explosion as he has, I think he can fall into that power back category because he's hard to take down. He's got really good balance, and you can't tackle him up high because he runs his legs and he drives his knees through contact. So I really, really like him, and I think if you're talking about last year with Sony Michel and Nick Chubb coming out of Georgia, I think he's just as good, if not slightly better than those two. After you talk about Elijah Holyfield, Dexter Williams is a guy I like out of Notre Dame. Real explosive, kind of a slasher. Reminds me kind of Ronald Jones coming from USC last year. He hit some home runs. Now, I think he outran people, but I'm not sure his long speed is as good as it might seem on tape, if that makes sense. But I think his burst is really good. I think he gets the top speed pretty fast, but I don't think his top speed is anything crazy. But the vision is there. Like I said, the explosion is there. I don't think the power is there. So if he navigates, finds the hole and picks up yards, which he's really good at, and exploding to get those yards pretty fast. But once he's going into contact, I don't think he's really moving anybody. So that's something you got to think about. But similar to Jacobs, got those longer arms, really good receiver threat. If you motion him out, he's 5'11". He looks kind of like a receiver if you put him out there. So I think he'll give you definitely some in the pass game. And then one question you got to ask is he too used to those wide lanes that Notre Dame gave him? Now, he has vision, but some of those lanes and cutbacks were very obvious because of the O-line that he was playing behind. So that's a question you got to ask. And then outside of Dexter, I really like David Montgomery out of Iowa State. Montgomery was a captain for Iowa State, a program that was on the rise. And he's just a good mix of everything. I mean, they did a little bit of pro style, a little bit of spread style. So again, kind of those tools, running those pro style routes, check releasing off a block, all those good things. Not being afraid to pass block and to get his pads out there on somebody that's blitzing. But I like his run style. I mean, he's not super shifty, but he tries, to make the most of his open area space against a defender. And he's definitely not the fastest, but I think he has good bursts, really good bursts. Again, gets to his top speed quickly, but doesn't mean his top speed is super fast. But I like what he gives you there. Just a really solid overall guy. And I think similar to Holyfield, he's got really, really good power. Not going to be easy to take down. Definitely going to drive his knees through all contact. So those are a couple guys that stood out to me. And then, of course, you got the injury guys, the question marks like Bryce Love coming out of Stanford, coming off of ACL from what I understand. But you're talking about a guy that everybody was saying could be the, not number one pick, but the number one back last year if he came out. And so I'm like, man, what happened to him? And I guess the injuries was kind of what happened to him. But you look at the tape when he was playing, the man's got good speed. I have no clue if he's healthy or not for the combine, but if he is and he can run an impressive 40, I think he shoots right back to the top of this list, because despite, him being kind of a speed guy, he definitely is pretty built. I mean, he might play around 200 pounds and he's 5'11", so he's not a small guy. And with that type of speed that he has, he still runs with some power to him and has really good balance and is a very good receiving threat with that speed and a mismatch for any linebacker. So, Bryce Love is a pretty solid candidate. We just got to see how the medicals come out. Then you got LJ Scott out of Michigan State, another guy that was supposedly supposed to be a top pick. Feels like he's been there forever for some reason, but yeah. Injuries, seems like he's not all there as a football player, more, focus on other things. So character red flags, then his injuries, back and forth. So we'll see. He was supposed to be the next Le'Veon. I don't know about that. And then Rodney Anderson out of Oklahoma, who looks great on tape, but has a long injury history and didn't really play this year as well. So those are the guys we're going to have to keep our eye out for. They entered the draft, so we just got to see kind of what the medicals end up being. So, again, I mean, for the running backs, this position's a dime a dozen, and any of these guys could be good in the right situation. And then there's a ton more backs that I didn't even get to. So, it should be interesting, man. It should be interesting. I outside of Josh Jacobs, I don't see anybody fighting to be a first round pick. And even with Jacobs, he's not going with Saquon went. So, even with an impressive combine, I'm still thinking he goes, 15 or later. So, I think there'll be plenty of guys to find throughout the rounds. All right. So let's get to the real grade. Today we are doing the Dallas Cowboys 2016 draft grade as we pull this up. All right. So Number one, we'll go down the line. Number one, we got Ezekiel Elliott, top 5 pick, star in the league. All know that. Number 2, second round, we got Jalen Smith out of Notre Dame. If you don't remember, that was a controversial pick because he was coming off a devastating injury, in the, what was those things called? Bowl games. And so coming off a devastating injury, and it was a gamble because they didn't know what type of player he would be. He was supposed to be a top 5 pick, but they took him, and it took a while, but he's a star player now. Third round, you got Malik Collins, was starting right off the back and still starting for the team, rotating. You got Charles Taper, who was with the team for a few years, and it seems like might be out of the league now. Then you got Dak Prescott, starting quarterback, 4th round, surprised everybody, took the reins. Then you got Anthony Brown, still on the team, rotating. You got Kayvon Frazier out of Central Michigan. Safety, still on the team, as a supporting role, started a few games this year. You got Darius Jackson, who is kind of depth and still on the team, and, well, bounced around, but, back on the team, I should say, as a depth player. And so then we got Rico Gathers in the 6th round tight end, who is still on the team, started a few games, also a depth player. So all in all, when you look at it, you got 3, 6, 9. 9 seems to be a magic number. You got 9 picks. Out of those 9 picks, 1 is no longer with the team and no longer in the league. He was a 4th round pick. So 4th rounds are valuable. That kind of hurts, but it's completely offset from finding a starting quarterback in the 4th round, hitting 2 stars with your first 2 picks, especially with that gamble you took. And then keeping everybody else on the team, even the running back that bounced around. You got to get this an A+. Got to get this an A+. Because out of your 9 picks, you got 1, 2, 3, 4 starters, and then you had guys that also gave you some starts throughout the season, so you really can't argue against that, giving an A+ to the Dallas Cowboys. And this draft is probably the biggest reason where they are right now, being able to make that playoff push. So there you go. Drafts matter. All right, so that's it. So go to the comment section. Let me know what you think about this running back class. Who do you think is top? I honestly think the combine is going to separate these guys. Once we see 40 times, we're really going to see who's where. But tell me what you think about the running backs, any that are your favorite. Tell me what you think about Dallas Cowboys 2016 draft. Get the conversation started, spread it around, thumbs up, subscribe, and thank you for listening.